The truth about Italy in the Bible and the role of Italians in prophecy is a mysterious and profound subject. Although there are few direct references to Italy in the Bible, through the prophecies we see excellent connections between historical events and the blessings and warnings that God gave to humanity. Italy, especially Rome, was once the center of the great Roman Empire, an empire that profoundly influenced world history. The Bible's prophets mention specific countries and peoples and future events involving great nations and their role in fulfilling God's plan. Many people pay attention to countries in the Middle East, such as Israel, Egypt, Iran, Italy, and Rome, are essential to interpreting the prophecies about the revival and re-emergence of great empires. The truth about the Italians in the Bible is a story about the past and a reminder of God's significant presence in every change of history. Number 1. The Roman legacy from the ancient empire to the influence on Christianity. Our modern country, Italy, has a deep and lasting connection with the ancient Roman Empire. This relationship is not only historical and cultural, but is also reflected in the earliest prophecies in the Bible. These connections are particularly evident in two significant events in the history of Christianity and the Bible: the death of Jesus Christ and the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem. First, we cannot fail to mention the central event of the Christian faith, the death of Jesus on the cross. The Roman Empire was mighty in the 1st century AD, covering the entire Mediterranean region and profoundly influencing its occupied lands. In Jerusalem, which was under the rule of the Roman Empire, Jesus was arrested, tried, and crucified, a figure who played a pivotal role in the execution of the death penalty. This was an essential part of God's plan for the redemption of humanity. Although the death of Jesus was not the decision of the Roman Empire, the execution was an integral part of the fulfillment of the prophecies about the Messiah in the Old Testament, especially in Isaiah 53, where he was mentioned to suffer for the sins of mankind. Another critical event involving Italy and the Roman Empire was the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem in 70 AD. This temple, where the Jews believed God resided on earth, was utterly destroyed by the Roman army under the command of Titus, son of Emperor Vespasian. This event is recorded in the Bible, in Mark 13:02 and Luke 21:6, where Jesus predicted that the temple would be destroyed, not one stone left on another. This fulfilled prophecy marked a significant turning point in religious history, not only for the Jews, but for all humanity. Although the Roman Empire collapsed centuries ago, its influence still reverberates in the Bible, especially in the prophecies of empires and the eventual restoration of nations. In the books of Daniel and Revelation, the Roman Empire is described as one of the mighty empires that will play an essential role in God's grand plan. In the book of Revelation, the image of empires, especially the Roman Empire, is mentioned as a beast, symbolizing the evil forces that will continue to influence the world until Christ returns. From essential events in history, the legacy of Rome is still clearly present in the Christian world today. One of the symbols of the Roman legacy is the Vatican, the center of religious power of the Catholic Church. Although the Vatican is no longer a military empire like the ancient Roman Empire, it still maintains a profound spiritual influence across the globe. The Vatican in Italy is an integral part of the Roman heritage, continuing to preserve the cultural and religious values of the Roman Empire, and these influences are still strongly felt in the spiritual lives of millions of people around the world. When we look back at the deep connection between the Roman Empire and the Bible, we see that historical events are not simply milestones of the past. They are part of God's great plan. Each event, whether the death of Jesus or the destruction of the temple, has a profound meaning, reflecting the fulfillment of prophecies and the plan of redemption for humanity. Although the Roman Empire is gone, its legacy continues to influence the religious and cultural life of the Christian world today. With all this, we not only learn lessons from history, but also see the greatness of God in leading humanity through all times. Every part of his plan has a reason, whether we understand it or not. The sacrifice of Jesus and the historical events surrounding it testify to God's boundless love for humanity. At the same time, the prophecies of the restoration of the nations and the resurrection of the people of Israel are signs of hope for all of us, for a future filled with grace and healing. Number 2. The divine connection, the descendants of Japheth and the Roman Empire. When we turn to the pages of the Bible, we encounter an ancient story of the formation of great peoples and nations, a story that not only reflects history, but also contains divine lessons from God. One of those stories begins with the 3 sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. They carried the blood of humanity and became the ancestors of people who changed the world. In the book of Genesis, we hear about the descendants of Japheth, who is known as the father of the peoples of the north and the west. The 3 sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, and Madai, began a long journey, expanding across the lands and creating great nations. But of all these names, one has left a more profound mark than the others: Javan. Javan, the son of Japheth, was not only the progenitor of the ancient Greek tribes, but also the pioneer of the Western civilization, which would profoundly influence the world. However, the relationship between Javan and these civilizations is not just a story of history, but also a part of God's great plan. Javan is the ancestor of the Hellenic people, the Greek tribes. Their fierce warriors and cultural knowledge made them the torchbearers of a new civilization, where art, philosophy, and military development flourished. While Greece opened the door to knowledge, Rome, the Roman Empire, inherited these values and took them to a new level. The connection between Java and Rome is not a simple historical story, but a convergence of ideas, cultures, and beliefs, through which the Roman Empire became one of the solid foundations for the spread of Christianity. Although Rome was not directly formed by the descendants of Japheth, the strong influence of Greek civilization through Java created an undeniable link. With its military and political power, Rome became the center of the ancient world, where Greek ideals of freedom and justice met with the new faith in Christ. The Roman Empire absorbed Greek knowledge and culture and profoundly influenced its religion and society. The Romans, with their belief in their gods, found in Christianity a new faith, a promise of salvation, and from there, this religion began to spread throughout the lands under Rome's control. Rome, with its military might and cultural influence, helped Christianity grow into the dominant religion not only in Europe, but throughout the world. This is not just a story of nations and empires. It is a story of God's presence throughout history as He used these nations to carry out His plan for humanity. The connection between Japheth and Rome reminds us of how God used these powerful empires to prepare the world for the coming of Christ and the expansion of His kingdom. The nations that Japheth spawned, including Rome, became essential instruments in God's hands to carry out a great mission. Thanks to the Greeks and Romans, Christianity was brought to every corner of the ancient world, and from there, it became the faith of billions of people around the globe. This demonstrates that even in a world of turmoil and change, God can still guide history in ways we cannot fully understand. Looking back at history, we see clearly that every nation, every person, large or small, has a role to play in God's plan of salvation. From the founding of great civilizations like Greece and Rome to the spread of Christianity worldwide, all are part of the grand story of human restoration and salvation. Looking back over the course of history, we see clearly that every nation, every person, large or small, has a role to play in God's plan of salvation. From the founding of great civilizations like Greece and Rome to the spread of Christianity worldwide, all are part of the grand story of human restoration and salvation. As we look at the political and cultural changes in the world today, we cannot help but remember the lessons that history teaches. History is not just a dry record of events, but a living narrative that reflects God's work on this earth. Through these events, we see God at work, and we, as believers, are called to participate in the work of salvation that He began from the earliest days of humanity. When we consider the connection between Japheth, Java, and the Roman Empire, we see the formation of civilizations and recognize the divine presence at every step of history. God used these nations to carry out His saving will for humanity. And just as we have a role to play in His grand plan, whether small or significant, we are all called to participate in bringing His light to the world. Number 3. Rome and prophecy, its rise and its role in the Bible. In biblical prophecy, the Roman Empire is an essential part of ancient history and holds profound significance for the world's future. The prophecies in the book of Daniel describe 4 great empires that would rule the world over a long period, and Rome was the last. The statue in King Nebuchadnezzar's dream, described in the book of Daniel, represents 4 great kingdoms that would greatly influence the history of mankind. The 4 world empires. In the book of Daniel 2, King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon had a strange dream about a giant statue with 4 parts. Each part represents an empire that would rule the world in its way. The head of gold represents the Babylonian Empire from 605 BC to 539 BC. The breasts and arms of silver represent the Medo-Persian Empire from 539 BC to 331 BC. The belly and thighs of bronze represent the Greek Empire from 331 BC to 168 BC. Finally, the legs of iron, combined with clay, represent the Roman Empire and its successors, which lasted from 168 BC to 476 AD and continued to influence the world until the end of time. The iron legs and the strength of Rome? Rome, described with iron legs, symbolized a mighty empire with unbreakable power. Daniel said that this empire would destroy all nations and dominate vast lands. History proved the truth of this prophecy when the Roman Empire grew, controlling a vast territory that covered Europe, Asia, and North Africa. However, this prophecy is remarkable. The iron legs were not completely solid, but mixed with clay. This signaled a division, a potential weakness within this mighty empire. As the Roman Empire entered its decline, these elements became more evident as the empire was divided, leading to the formation of successor nations and kingdoms. Rome and the future, the rise of the Antichrist. The prophecies in the book of Daniel describe past events and reveal a vision of the future. In Daniel 7, we see the image of the 4th beast, a terrifying beast with 10 horns, representing the 10 nations of the final empire. One of these horns, called the Little Horn, will arise and become the center of power for the Antichrist. This prophecy clearly indicates that the Antichrist will arise from a power structure similar to Rome, although the Roman Empire is fallen. However, Rome's influence remains in its successor nations' political, military, and cultural structures, especially in the European Union and modern international institutions. The Antichrist will be an evil leader, one who opposes God and His holy people. He will have terrible influence and impose religious and political power on the world. The rise of the Antichrist is clearly described in the prophecy of the Little Horn, as he will seek to deceive the world and control people. The Roman Empire and the return. One of the most essential parts of the prophecy about Rome is its return in the end times. Although the Roman Empire has long since fallen, Bible prophecy suggests that a new empire, perhaps a Roman confederation or a rebirth of Rome, will arise and take power in the future. These events will take place against the backdrop of a final war, when nations and empires will join forces against Israel and the righteous. This is part of the great apocalyptic events the Bible describes before Jesus returns to bring salvation to those who believe in him. Number 4. The revival of Rome in the end times. Among the Bible's prophecies about events that will occur in the end times, one theme mainly attracts attention: the revival of Rome. This is not only a story about a fallen empire in the past, but also an essential sign of significant events that will occur in the future. One of the most prominent events related to this revival is clearly mentioned in the book of Revelation of Daniel, precisely the image of the feet of iron and clay in King Nebuchadnezzar's dream. When Daniel interpreted King Nebuchadnezzar's dream, he said that the dream involved a statue with a head of gold, a chest and arms of silver, a belly and thighs of bronze, and feet made of iron mixed with clay. This image describes the development of empires through the ages, starting with the Babylonian Empire, then Medo-Persia, Greece and Rome, and finally a final national confederation built on the foundation of Rome. In Daniel 2:41-43, the feet of iron and clay symbolize a strong but divided empire that could not stand. The Roman Empire, in the past, had been a mighty power, occupying most of the Western world. But as the empire collapsed, disunity began. The nation that once belonged to the Roman Empire gradually dispersed, weakening their bonds. However, Daniel prophesied that Rome would undergo a renaissance in the end. This renaissance would be a return to the old empire and the emergence of a powerful political and military system capable of dominating the world once again. In this context, the restoration of Rome is seen as an essential sign of the coming of the Antichrist. In Revelation 13, we are warned about the coming of a global ruler who will rule the world through political, military, and religious power. He will emerge from a power system built on the foundation of Rome and will bring division, conflict, and evil. However, we are also reminded that the Antichrist's power will be short-lived and will eventually be destroyed by God. The restoration of Rome is part of a historical plan and a sign for the future. It is part of the journey that God has planned for humanity. According to Daniel 2:44, in the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. This reminds us that while nations may be powerful, only God's kingdom, through Jesus Christ, is lasting and undying. We must not forget that the restoration of Rome and the emergence of the Antichrist are only signs of God's final arrangement of this world. While these nations may rule briefly, this restoration is temporary and will be replaced by an everlasting kingdom. God will execute justice and judgment, and in the end, all worldly powers will be brought to heel before him. The Bible's prophecies of the restoration of Rome and the emergence of the Antichrist remind us that the end times are not a time of despair, but an opportunity for us to return to God and live in his peace. No matter how the world changes, we can trust in God's protection and guidance. God has said that he will return in glory to establish his kingdom on this earth, which is the hope we can hold on to for the future. Ultimately, Rome's restoration and the Antichrist's emergence are just signs that the end times are near. This is the time for us to prepare, to follow God, and to live in his light. We must keep our faith in God, for he will bring restoration and salvation to those who trust in him. Number 5, sacrifice and judgment, the closing of Jerusalem and Jesus. The story of Jesus' death on the cross, which took place around 30-33 AD, is one of the most pivotal events in the history of Christianity. Not only does it have profound religious significance, but it also contains valuable lessons about sacrifice, judgment, and forgiveness. One of the essential elements of this event is the involvement of the Roman Empire, especially the role of the governor, Pontius Pilate. This is 1. The direct involvement of Rome in the death of Jesus. Jesus was accused of blasphemy and sedition by the Jewish religious leaders of the time. However, the power to judge and carry out the death penalty belonged to the Roman government under the rule of the governor Pontius Pilate. Although Pilate did not find Jesus guilty, he was under pressure from the high priests and the crowd demanding Jesus' death. Therefore, Pilate decided to allow Jesus to be crucified, even though he knew full well that this was an unjust decision. This shows that the direct involvement of the Roman Empire in the death of Jesus was not just a political act, but also part of God's grand plan. Although Pilate carried out the sentence at the crowd's behest, Jesus fulfilled his mission through this event, the sacrifice to redeem humanity from sin. 2. Destruction of the Second Temple and the fulfillment of prophecy. Jesus' most prominent prophecies was about the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. In Matthew 24 verses 2 and 3, he said, "Not one stone will be left upon another, all will be destroyed." This prophecy was fulfilled in 70 AD when the Roman army under Titus entered Jerusalem and destroyed the temple and the city, ending an era of temple worship. This was a historical event and had profound meaning in showing a change in worship. Jesus revealed that the temple was no longer the only place for Jews to encounter God. This prophecy also emphasizes the shift in the concept of worship from offering sacrifices in the temple to worshiping God in spirit and truth. 3. Rome and God's judgment. Jesus' death on the cross was not only a human judgment, but also the execution of an eternal judgment by God. Jesus accepted all the suffering and torture that humans caused in order to bring forgiveness to humanity. Rome's involvement, with the cross as the instrument of execution, also reflected God's judgment on the sins of the world. However, Jesus' death was not the end. His resurrection 3 days later was a sign of victory over sin and death, bringing hope and salvation to all who believe in him. This resurrection also reflected the rebirth and restoration of the church, from a mournful funeral to a strong and vibrant community. 4. The significance of the event for Israel and the change in worship. The death and resurrection of Jesus not only changed the history of Christianity, but they also brought about profound changes in the way Israel worshipped. The Jerusalem temple was no longer the center of worship, but the connection with God was now made through faith in Jesus. He was not only the Son of God, but also the Messiah, who was the model for all who sought salvation. This change affected not only the Jews, but all who believed in Jesus from every people and every nation. Jesus was the one who brought reconciliation between humanity and God, regardless of ethnicity or religion. Number 6. The Vatican, from center of spiritual power to final prophet. The Vatican, the spiritual heart of Christianity, has long since moved beyond the confines of a mere religious center. Through many historical events, the Vatican has not only been a symbol of faith, but also a political power with profound influence throughout the world. After the collapse of the Roman Empire at the end of the 5th century, the Vatican rose as a guiding light for millions of believers and as a solid support for education and important political decisions in Europe. The rise of the Vatican after the Roman Empire. In 476 AD, when the Roman Empire officially collapsed, a new period opened. Rome was the political capital of the mighty empire and the center of the spiritual power of a newly awakened world. In the following centuries, the Vatican gradually developed into a great educational center, contributing to maintaining social stability and intellectual development. The popes and religious leaders asserted their authority in spiritual matters and important political decisions, forming a robust power structure that combined the spiritual and the secular. The Vatican and political power. The Vatican not only maintained its role as a religious center, but also exercised considerable political power throughout the Middle Ages. The popes did not hesitate to intervene in national affairs, sometimes even against emperors and kings. The Vatican became an independent state with the right to control international relations and engage in military conflicts when necessary. However, this intervention was not always popular. Criticism of the papacy's involvement in secular affairs, their accumulated wealth, and their political power led to many debates and conflicts. This inevitably raises questions about the relationship between spiritual and secular power in an institution like the Vatican. The connection between the Vatican and the Antichrist in Revelation. In Revelation 17, we encounter the image of the woman sitting on the beast, which could refer to a far-reaching religious body. Combining religious power with secular power, some scholars believe that the Vatican may be part of this great woman, symbolizing the combination of faith and politics. Revelation describes this woman as a powerful entity with global influence, and some have suggested that this could be a warning about the future emergence of the Antichrist, where religious institutions may be used to manipulate major events. While it is impossible, many scholars believe that the Vatican may play an essential role in planning in the last days. In a world of turmoil, the Vatican could become a tool of dark forces to promote the rise of the Antichrist. Some even believe that in some situations, the Vatican could be caught up in the events that led to destruction on the day of final judgment. Warnings and hope. Despite its association with the prophets of Revelation, the Vatican is not just a symbol of darkness. On the contrary, the Vatican can also be an instrument of God in the salvation of humanity. Despite its troubles and controversies throughout history, the Vatican has been a source of light and hope for the world. With its spiritual power and far-reaching influence, the Vatican can be essential in reviving the faith and helping humanity overcome great challenges. Many theologians believe that, despite warnings about the Vatican's connection to the Antichrist, there is still hope for the Vatican's rebirth in God's plan. In the most difficult times, the Vatican can be a beacon of light for humanity, helping us realize that in the end, God will triumph over all evil powers and justice will be served. Number 7. The Roman Empire and its rebirth in prophecy. The journey of the Roman Empire is not only recorded in history books, but also in the profound prophecies of the Bible. Although it had declined politically for centuries, the Roman Empire had not disappeared. The Bible shows that it would be reborn once again in the last days. The images and symbols in books such as Daniel and Revelation indicate that, although the Roman Empire had disintegrated, it still had a strong and widespread influence in the modern world. The Roman Empire and prophecy. When we look at parts of the Bible, especially in Daniel and Revelation, we see a powerful image of a mighty empire, one that, although politically weakened, was reborn and played a significant role in the end times. In his visions, Daniel described the rise of a final kingdom, which, according to many interpreters, is the rebirth of the Roman Empire. The image of the beast with the 10 crowns in Revelation 17 vividly illustrates how the remnants of the Roman Empire will be reassembled as new kingdoms, cooperating in various ways. This is not just a story from the past, but a warning for the future. These prophecies do not only refer to an ancient empire, but they also reflect the forces that are present in our time. We cannot help but look at the development of the European Union, where Italy, the heart of ancient Rome, still plays a vital role in global politics and influence. The 10 kings in the European Union. An essential point in the prophecy is the appearance of the 10 kings, mentioned in Revelation and Daniel. These kings were not just individual leaders, but representatives of the nations associated with the Roman Empire. In a modern context, this can be understood as the rebirth of the Roman Empire through the political cooperation of the countries of the European Union. Italy's central role in Roman history is again at the center of this development. Revelation 17 describes a beast with 10 crowns and 10 kings, an image that symbolizes the division of power and influence among the nations that survived the Roman Empire. These kings will dominate politically and profoundly impact religion and culture, continuing the legacy of ancient Rome. The role of Italy and Vatican City. It is impossible not to mention the unique role of Italy, and in particular the Vatican City, in the rebirth of the Roman Empire. The Vatican, the residence of the Pope, is not only a religious center, but also a vital part of the global political and religious network. Biblical prophecies are closely linked to the history of Italy, where the Roman Empire was once a great power, and Italy's role in the modern world only further illustrates this rebirth. As we reflect on the rise of the modern Roman Empire, we cannot help but look at the Vatican's power in shaping the world's political and spiritual direction. Biblical prophecies indicate that, in the last days, the final empire will emerge from the very foundations of Rome, and Italy, with its far-reaching influence, is the starting point for this rebirth. The Antichrist in the last days? The rebirth of the Roman Empire is not limited to the re-establishment of political power. The Bible also shows that an Antichrist will arise in the last days, and the Roman Empire will play a major role in its birth. Biblical prophets warn that Antichrist forces will rise and cause devastating wars, leading to global conflict. However, it is also in these dark times that God's prophecy offers hope for a final resurrection and salvation. Every historical event is part of God's grand plan, and the prophecies about the Roman Empire are not just a warning, but a reminder of the transience of worldly power and the permanence of God's kingdom. While evil forces may rise, in the end, God will prevail. The last days, according to the Bible, will see the restoration and rebirth of an empire. But it is essential that in those days, loyalty and faith in God will be the decisive factor. The Bible is a history book and contains profound prophecies about nations and peoples, including Italy. With its long history and important role in world events, Italy is also mentioned in Bible prophecies. Images of Rome, the capital of Italy, appear in many prophetic passages, from the book of Daniel to the book of Revelation, relating to the events of the end times of the world. Rome, with its incredible power and influence, has become a symbol of the forces opposed to God, but at the same time is an indispensable part of God's plan to bring about redemption and restoration. Looking back through history, nations can change and recover in light of Bible prophecy. Like Italy, individuals and governments can find peace and hope through an awareness of God's word and a return to Him. The Bible teaches us that despite significant challenges and trials, in the end, restoration and peace will come to those who trust in God and follow Him. Stay tuned for more profound lessons from the Bible and prophecies about the nations in the end times. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on meaningful videos about your spiritual journey and messages from God.